You're now locked into Radio Juxtapoz, the home of contemporary art and culture conversation.
Coming up today.
The day after the war came down, my parents immediately went to the West just to explore, because every family got money from the government, and we could spend it on whatever we wanted to. And so they went to Brunswick, and the first thing I had was peanuts and Coca-Cola.
This is Radio Juxtapoz. It's been a minute since we checked in with everyone. How are you? We're back with another steamy hot interview this week on Radio Juxtapoz. Our guest today might have Germany on her passport, but we're not sure how much we believe that. Rumour has it she floated down to Earth on a neon-coloured spaceship just happening to land in East Germany in the late 80s. Blown away by the impact of the candy-coloured enthusiasm, the Germans had no choice but to tear down the wall. I mean, you wouldn't expect anything less from an artist going by the name Super Future Kid. With 2020 shelling out its fair share of darkness, we found some positive rays of happiness to shower over everyone like confetti at the closing moments of Glastonbury. So sit back, get comfy, and soak up. We did have a classic Radio Juxtapoz opening with Evan Preco and myself, Doug Gillen, talking about life, but quite frankly, it was too depressing to slot into this episode, so it's been given the boot. If you like this, be sure to let us know. Hit us up on the socials and show Super Future Kids some love ahead of our forthcoming show at Over the Influence in Hong Kong. Enjoy the episode.
This is the first time I'm doing this, so it makes me feel a bit nervous.
I thought you were going to say that you were nervous about your show opening, and then I was going to ask you Seaweed Sunrise in Hong Kong at Over the Influence next week, but you're not going, so the nerves are different now.
Yeah, I wish I could go. I was really looking forward to it actually, but that's the things are this year. So
was there any chance that you could have gone? Was it kind of like, well, things are looking better? Because I've been talking to people in Hong Kong, and it seems like they've been really start and stop.
Yeah. No, the gallery tried to, but they say that they closed off for anyone from the outside, except that you live there. You can go. But
Oh, wow. So they're like really trying to actively shut down people traveling.
Yeah.
That's good. That's very responsible. But you were sort of out that way earlier this year, was it?
No, that was 2 years ago.
Oh, shit. Okay. Well, we'll cut that bit out.
Yeah. It's, you know what? Years don't matter anymore.
We only went to New York in February and March this year. And then as soon as we came back, everything was just pure chaos.
Do you feel like you've lost anything by not traveling?
Well, I miss it a lot, but haven't really had any negative impact. I can't really say that I had.
And you had a show to prepare for, so there was also like you were already getting into the mode of maybe not going anywhere anyway.
Exactly. So basically, it was the perfect timing.
How did this pandemic alter your plans? Like, how far into the show were you when we all kind of got derailed?
So we just had the show at spring break. Like 2 days after we deinstalled it, we had to fly back. We actually wanted to stay in New York a bit longer, but we had to fly back because there were rumors about the city locking down and everything. And I was already planning to start working on the show for Hong Kong as soon as I come back. So it was just like really good timing that we finished this one, and then I had all the time in the world to work on that.
Doug and I were in New York at the same time, and we missed spring break because we sort of, I think he and I both were kind of like, I don't know. We kind of had this, like, we did our work and we're like, we don't really want to go out anymore. Because like the rumors and the talk, everything felt really, I mean, obviously the word of the year is uncertain, but it felt like all of a sudden all of us had to make major decisions about what we were going to do for the next week.
We were just so busy with the whole art fair thing that we only had like 1 or 2 days to go out to see art shows after the fair. And they were already saying, oh, thank you for actually coming, because people are so scared to come to the shows. And so it was very tense.
That was the really weird part, where it was like we really didn't know what was kind of coming, and everyone was like kind of, just doing like the joking elbows, like, hey, this is, look at us doing the elbows. And it was like, actually, no, don't shake hands. We don't do that anymore.
Do you send directions to the gallery of how to present your works? Because your work, what you do is so cool. Like, you have your paintings, but you place them on things. You've got sculptures. Like, there's so many, like, you have a very unique way of presenting work in a traditional gallery setting. Like, what is your like template that you send to people to set up the show? Do they have to get on a Zoom conference with you and make sure that they get it all right?
One thing was that I want them to paint the walls. So I gave them a proposal of what I would want to do. And usually they have like just one color or no color. And I want to have a gradient from that looks like a sunrise. So it's like a pink goes into a blue. And they hadn't done it before, so they had to find a painter who can do this. And it took a while until they told me that they found someone and they can actually do it, which is great. And then the second thing is I just build a tiny model of the space and try to figure out what I want to have there. And then we're gonna have a Zoom or some video call to make the installation together.
Did you mean a digital model, or did you mean an actual tiny model?
Both.
That's amazing. I like that.
Love it.
With the gradient on the thing. So have you seen it then? Is it, because it's the 10th, isn't it? So it's kind of like, is it all set or in production?
So currently they have a show that finishes tomorrow, and then after that they have 1 week or like 6 or 7 days to install my show.
I think what you should do, I think you should like make one big drastic change when you're like going through it with them, just to be like, you guys got it all wrong. I just feel like throw down some weight, throw down some power, and just make a big change like right before.
That's a little Diva Evan moment in there.
Hey, she can't be there, so she might as well make one like, extraneous like detail, make it become a big deal.
How did the virus impact you then in production for this? Did it alter the headspace, the work that you were creating, or was it still kind of like on the right traction and you were really not impacted by it at all?
Well, on one hand, I found that I was so lucky that I could say I didn't feel impacted at all. But on the other hand, if you think about like you want to plan for the future, and that's something that is not really possible at the moment. So I can't make any proper plans for next year. So this is the only negative impact I can really think of right now.
So it didn't like feed into the dialogue of your work or anything like that?
Well, I mean, the general feeling of uncertainty, and I mean, it was kind of scary because you don't know how the world is going to change, and the lockdown situation was really weird, where we had to stay home and you go out and there's like nobody there. So it was definitely very strange how it was for everyone else, the same situation, I guess. So I don't know if it really had a big impact.
Yeah, like that your characters didn't take on new shapes. They didn't start doing different things that you had not actually, or like subconsciously you can now look back and go, oh, I sort of took whatever was going on in my head and my maybe anxiety about what's going on, and they've shown up in these characters. Or did it kind of did more of the fantastical part of your work actually start coming through more because there was an escape that you wanted to portray?
But I mean, generally, I always think that my work provides me with a sort of escapism. I can create my own universe, and I'm not a solitary person, but a bit of a hermit character. So for me, it was kind of like, that's what I always do. I mean, I'm always locked inside, and I don't really socialize except for the digital world, like Instagram or whatever. So I don't know if it maybe subconsciously it seeped into the work, but I'm not aware of it so much.
I always try to figure out if like the work is a direct, like how, like you can see when you see an artist and then you see their work, it just suddenly like makes sense. You're like, oh, of course. Like when you meet an artist, you're like, I get this. And then with the kind of like, you know, the interviews and everything like that, I've been trying to figure out if the work was the extension of the place that you were trying to create, or if you saw yourself as the outgoing, colorful, bang, 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 but you've just described yourself more as a sort of solitary introvert rather than this big, bold extrovert. So is this for you, your way of showing the world that what's going on inside of your process, inside of your head?
Yeah, I always think that maybe my work is like my alternative persona, or is representing parts of me that I'm not able to present as a person or verbally. So I just created like an avatar or something like this. So it communicates things about myself that I'm not able to communicate any other way.
I like this thing that you've said in the interview with Juxtapoz a couple years ago. You mentioned, because you grew up in East Germany, and obviously you had a significant part of your childhood was before the wall came down and before the changes in 89. You said this thing I think is really cool. I'm trying to get if I can get the quote right, but you said that your childhood had a massive upgrade once the change happened. And I was thinking to myself, like, okay, so, you know, you were talking about the grays and the lack of color maybe in your childhood, but this upgrade that happened, what was like the first thing that you got or that you experienced that you started to like absorb color in a different way?
So the first thing was the day after the wall came down, my parents immediately went to the West just to explore, because every family got money from the government, and we could spend it on whatever we wanted to. And so they went to Brunswick, and the first thing I had was peanuts and Coca-Cola.
That red pops.
And also there was a toy store, and they had these huge stuffed animals in there. They were like toys, but they were like bigger than myself. And I was like so blown away by also other toys that they had. It was like, wow, look at all this stuff, you know.
What was that other side then? Like, what do you remember of East Germany, even though you were, you know, obviously still super young?
East Germany is very lo-fi, so everything is, they make everything by hand. I mean, they made everything by hand because you couldn't get everything, so you had to improvise. So it was a lot of DIY and repairing stuff instead of throwing it away, buying new things. The design was basic. Nothing was extraordinary or yelling into your face when you saw it, you know. So that's probably what made it so striking to see the West suddenly, because everything was so loud and so, like, the colors were so vibrant, and we just didn't. I mean, I grew up in a village almost. It's like a small town, and there wasn't much going on anyway. So it was, first time in a big city.
Do you think that's where your aesthetic comes from?
Well, it stuck with me since then. That's the excitement that I felt I still have. I'm not getting tired of looking at colors or looking at interesting like toys or whatever. I just never get tired of this. It's still really exciting for me.
Well, you've said in interviews past, like, there's something about like that you feel childish, but you get to do grown-up things. And it's like it's almost as like that initial energy of seeing these things has like been the precipice of everything you've done. And you can go off and be a grown-up, but like your art will always have that initial energy of the things that you experienced right when that flipped for you in your childhood, which is cool.
That's true, yeah.
Why do you keep picking gray places to live? Not to say that you need to move to Los Angeles or whatever, but it's fascinating to me that you grew up in East Germany and then now you're in London. And to me, like, London's fantastic, but it's also a very gray, dark place.
Especially right now.
It's very true. I mean, when I moved here, I didn't really have a concept about art or what I wanted to do as an artist at all. I was just like really into moving to England because it was exciting. It was not like German. I just got tired of being around Germans in Germany. I just had to get out of there. I don't know. The language was interesting for me, and it was just later on that I started to realize what is really meaningful to myself in my work and where it comes from. And now London doesn't make sense for me at all anymore. But I've got used to it, so I really don't mind being here. But I definitely want to move. But right now it's just not possible.
I was gonna stay on. There's a couple of questions I wanted to ask you in that thread. Firstly, do you remember what your impression of England was in your head before you got here? Like what it was that you were thinking you're going? Because I remember the first time I went to the States and I had this image in my head of every single film I'd ever seen, and it was gonna be just like that. And parts were, and I wonder for you, what was it like when you were coming to England for the first time? Like what did you think England was?
Definitely the same as you had. I had this really cliche image of this like tea party and Alice in Wonderland, and everything is so like cute, and it fascinated me because I really thought this is what it means to be here. And then of course you figure it out when you come here that actually a lot of places don't look like this at all, and the people are like rude and
some guy taking a shit in the street over there.
Wow.
Something like that, yeah. That was even more interesting because if you go there expecting something and then you find out that it's something that you weren't expecting at all, that's even more exciting. It was an adventure.
What was it that kind of kept you here in specifically London?
The space, the studio that I'm in right now, because I just really love being in here. I live and work in the same studio. And for me, this was like my perfect capsule to exist and to make the work. And it's been like this for 10 years now, but I feel that it's time to upgrade or move on.
Another upgrade.
Yeah.
The final kind of question that was sort of in my head there was, it's kind of inescapable. You are European. You're in London. I hate to bring it up. Did Brexit change your perception of what London was, what England was, what Britain was?
Well, in the beginning, I got a bit worried because I didn't know what it would actually mean in the end. But the more I progressed, the more I figured out that I don't have to be worried because we've been here for such a long time, and it was only really a concern for people who just started to move.
I just meant more in terms of the perception of, you think the country is this, and London's kind of exempt from that because London's a bubble.
Yeah.
But you think the country's this, and then it just hits you with something else, and you're like, shit, this isn't what I thought it was. Did you feel any of that?
I actually wasn't really so surprised about the whole Brexit thing at all. I mean, the Germany is very similar to.
I was gonna say that's some good East German history going on there. These things don't surprise.
I wasn't surprised, no.
Where would be next?
Yeah.
Obvious final question of that. What are you thinking?
Well, I'm applying for an artist visa to move to America, to the States. And if it all goes well, then New York would be the first pick to go.
Shit.
Going back to growing up in Germany and the art that we're all accustomed to of like German artists, very serious, Gerhard Richter, Neo Rausch, like these very serious men painters. When you're growing up and you start doing what you're doing, are you just feeling so against the grain of like what German art is known for? And like, how do you like get out of that shadow of like the serious, like male centric art world that is like what the outside world perceives Germany to be?
Well, actually, it was more the opposite in the beginning. Like I remember in 2004, I saw a news clip on TV about an exhibition by Neo Rauch, and I was so blown away by his work. Like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I was
Very
like,
cool.
maybe I can paint, maybe I can do something like that. And that kind of sparked my first interest into becoming a painter. And so I was really into his work for quite a while. And then when I left Germany in 2008, I also started to really distance myself from anything that was going on in Germany completely. Like I didn't pay any attention to the German art scene whatsoever. So I never felt any need to where to put myself in context to the work that was made there.
If you were to be in Germany at the time you were in art school or you were learning about art, what kind of stuff were they drilling into you? Like what is the kind of German school of, is it Bauhaus? Is it Neo Rauch? Like what actually is kind of like the stuff that they try to like get into your head at a young age?
Well, I can only tell from myself. I was lucky. I went to the art school in Berlin, in Weißensee, and it's very small. So we have like 15 students maximum per class. And my teacher was extremely liberal, and he was kind of encouraged us to experiment and to try all kinds of different mediums. But I also heard stories about like Leipzig school, that they are very much being trained by one particular artist, and then they follow exactly their style of work. So I was kind of glad that my art school didn't do that at all. So
who would be your all-time pick if you had to study under one painter? Who would it be?
Oh, geez.
I like that. I don't think we've ever asked that question.
No, I don't think we have either, which is weird because we've done like 55 of these.
I think it would be somebody who's no longer alive, unfortunately, but Elizabeth Murray would be my pick as a teacher.
Oh, okay. Why?
Why? Because I really loved the way that she was so innovative with her work and so extremely playful. And I'm still so drawn to everything that she did, and I never get tired of looking at it. And I wish I had a chance to like have a conversation, or I wish if she was still alive to see what she would be doing now. So
there's little bits of like much like more serious realism that jump into your work from time to time. What drives that? Like,
can you give me an example?
You're gonna put me on the spot now, are
Find
you?
the painting.
Find the painting I'm talking about, and then I'm gonna ask you that. Just bear with me for a second.
I used to do I used to at least try to do realist painting, but I kind of quit this altogether, and now I hope that it's no longer like attached to realism or seriousness.
Like, it's a piece from 2014, so it's soft and sticky.
Oh, that's old stuff.
I was wondering what would direct that switch from that into the work that we understand you doing today, which is much more, I guess, escapist.
I mean, the previous work also served to me as like an escape to create my own world, but it was for me. I did it for like 6 years or so, and I got to a point where I felt like I'm no longer excited to do this. Like I was so I was using a lot of reference material, and I kind of got tired of having to reference things, and I wanted to just start from scratch and just create my own material, not to have to reference anything that already exists.
So was your early work much more closely linked to that kind of, that reference material and kind of just recreation of what you've seen?
It was, as I said, when I was so intrigued by the work from Neo Rauch, as an example, because he creates these like surreal worlds, and that was fascinating for me to think about creating a painting that is almost like a dream, but you use a lot of things that don't really belong together, and you put them in context, and that was fun for me for a while to do that. And then at some point I was like, no, I have to change.
You probably get asked this all the time, but who are these characters? Like, where do they come from? Because there are like some kind of consistent looks to them, and it almost feels like they're like in your little universe. They come back and they come, they show up and they take a starring role and then they leave. But where are these people coming from?
I kind of think that they're always like a self-portrait. I'm not trying to paint myself, but in a way it's like an emotional reflection, or it reflects like some parts of my personality that I try, because I'm always trying to figure out who I am as a person. And for me, painting is my only really means to try to get an answer to that. So I always think that every time I paint something, it's kind of like a mirror, but in a very distorted parallel universe, it could have kind of existed. So this could be me, but totally weird. I don't know.
But then like these little additions that you do that like exist outside of the canvases, like the way you prop the paintings up and all these different parts, like how is that then part of the story that you're telling? Because I love it, because it's like you don't fuck around like with details. Like you make sure there's details everywhere. And I love that, because it's like you don't let a gallery just be a gallery. Like it's your world. And I think that's really special and cool, these extra details that you throw in. But how does that fit into, like, it's like we're looking at your world, but then like these little pieces are outside of the canvases, which I think are really important.
Well, when I started to change my style, I also felt that just painting itself wasn't enough for me. And I always try to find a way out of the two dimensions into like a sculpture, but I didn't have any clue about how to make sculpture at all. So I just started to like do something that made sense to me. And this is how these sculptures, the heads emerged just out of like a blob of expanding foam that I painted a face on. It was like, this kind of works. And for me, this is just like a really good extension of the work. It's not restricted to the canvas, to the flat surface, but it's allowed to exist outside of that in the real world, so you can walk around it, and they still belong together. So the painting and the sculpture, they are like a unit, but they are two different entities at the same time.
Now, if somebody were to buy the whole thing and they bring it to their house and they don't present it in the way that you present it in the gallery, does that kind of throw you off a little bit?
It pisses me off sometimes.
Oh shit!
Yes,
I did not think you were.
I was hoping
that.
Good on. I don't want to give any specific examples, but I've seen some weird ways of people doing that, and it's like it makes sense for them because they have dogs and they don't want the dogs to be like around the sculptures and stuff. Or some people are just worried that there's something that is going to fall over, or I don't know, for whatever reason they don't place it the way that I actually wanted to. But then on the other hand, it's their home and they can do whatever they want to. So
have you ever had to hold back from like sending a little message, just like a little email or an Instagram DM being like, I know this is your painting, but this is wrong.
These are the directions for which to hang my painting.
I don't do that. I just keep it for myself, because they in their house they can do whatever they want to. It's cool. I mean,
when you're sort of like stepping up to a canvas for the first time, what's your environment like? Is it noisy? Do you need some distractions, or do you have it quiet and just you in the zone? Like, what? Talk us through this a little bit.
I always have to have the radio on, and I just I need to have something playing that I enjoy, and then I just go from there. I mean, this is like the whole space is where I sleep and where I work and where I eat and where I do everything. So I really feel comfortable in this whole environment, and I can just sit on my chair and stare at the painting for an hour and not do anything. And then I go up and like do something.
Do you do one by one, or do you do like you have like 3 or 4 paintings that you're working on at a time? Because the space that we can see right now, I see one painting, but just curious.
I usually have 2 or 3 pieces at the same time because it's for me. I used to have only one, and then I have the next one, but it makes more sense for me to rotate them because then I have a break from one piece and I can get a fresh view when I take it out again. And also they influence each other sometimes, so they kind of connect.
I think it would be crazy for us not to ask now that we've mentioned the elephant in the room or the horse, the neon electric cowgirl horse. What is that piece behind you that you're working on just now? Can you maybe just visually describe it for us?
Yeah, it's for a show with Gallery Paulsen in October. It opens on Halloween actually. So it's just for they have an annual group show. Usually it takes place in summer, but now they had to postpone it to October. So it's a group of bandits basically. It's a guy on a horse, and then there's going to be 2 sculptures that you can't see right now underneath it. And I was thinking either one of them is trying to catch the other 2, which are placed underneath, or they are just like a group of 3 bandits that just ride around doing their thing.
Where does your love of cowboys come from?
That's a really good question. I mean, I remember my first costume when I was in kindergarten was a cowboy, and I loved it so much that I wanted to wear it all the time. Like no matter what time of the year it was, I always wanted to wear the cowboy costume. And I just like the idea of the freedom. Like they can just do whatever they want to, and they are not connected to any rules or social constraints, or I don't know. They just live their life in the wild with the horse. For me, animal companion is a very important thing. I mean, unfortunately I don't have one here, but if I could, I had like a whole stable of animals around me. So the guy and the horse for me is perfect combo.
Was that like part of like an American pop culture kind of thing that was making its way to you in the late 80s, early 90s that like what was like kind of interesting? Because it's funny, you know, I live in Northern California, and like cowboys to me were like a fantasy, and they felt so far away from where I grew up. But I just always assumed that a part of America's pop culture reach is always the cowboy as like
the
this
Lone
sort of
Ranger.
Figure.
That would have been about that.
Yeah, it's weird how that is like one of our exports. Like did you get any of that stuff when in Germany at in the late 80s, early 90s?
I don't really remember the first time I encountered the whole Wild West or cowboy thing. I don't think it's connected. For me, it was connected to America originally. It was just like this universal idea of there's this thing that's a cowboy. And it's somewhere in the desert with cacti and tumbleweed. And for me, now of course now I see the really strong connection to America, but before it was always like there.
Doug was asking this question earlier. I know he was getting into the idea of like a sketchbook and like what you use to like kind of as your source material just for these paintings, but also like did you have like what were your sketchbooks like as a kid?
I didn't have sketchbooks. I had lots of loose sheets of paper, and usually they were like recycled. We were drawing on the back of a map, or we were drawing on the back of product labels that were actually going around like washing powder, or I don't know.
She just East Germany, Duras.
This is totally East German. Like we were like using whatever was available. And sketchbook for me only started to be a thing in art school, not before.
Wait a minute. This is the most ridiculous damn thing we've ever done, Doug. We haven't even asked you, Super Future Kid. We haven't even asked you when Super Future Kid begins. Like, when does that persona become? When did it start? It's one of the greatest names in art to begin with. It's a fantastic name, and I hope you never get rid of it. It's so amazing. But like, when did that like actually become how you presented yourself in the art world?
Well, it was 2011 that I picked the name, but it was just I had a residency in New York in 2010, and when I came back from there, it was the first time that I kind of started to think about art more seriously, or like, I guess myself as an artist more seriously. And I never felt comfortable connecting my actual name with my work because, in my sense, it just didn't fit. Like my name sounds like a lady who does watercolors. It doesn't fit to my work at all. So that's why I tried, man, I have to find a name for myself. I mean, because when you are born, you are given a name, you can't choose it. But nobody stops you from choosing your own name later on in life. So I was just playing around with some different variations. And then I was like, okay, this is it. I'm going to use that.
Yeah. Did you have like a list? Like, what were some of the other ones that you were thinking? Can you tell us?
I don't remember in detail, but I know that I had, I was thinking about it for a while before settling on this one, because I thought if I pick this one now, then I have to be happy with it for forever.
I wanted to ask you this. I've actually wanted to ask you this before, and now it's a perfect time to ask you. Because you use that name, Super Future Kid, do you ever find yourself accidentally being placed into like street art or different genres that you don't belong in, because that's such a moniker based culture? That like, have you ever had to kind of like explain that no, that's not where I come from?
Yeah, strangely, when I changed my style into the more digital look, people it kind of immediately tried to put me into the urban art, street art corner, and I was like, why? I'm not doing any of this. Like, I'm not a street artist, I'm not an urban artist, so it felt a bit weird. But because of the choices I make with like the kind of galleries and the kind of shows, people start to like realize that I'm not this in this corner, but in a different corner of the art world in a way.
Do you remember the moment where you came up with Super Future Kid and how that process was going out in your head?
Yeah, I do. I have a big sketchbook. Still have it. It's just right behind me. And it was like drawing the name out in like really different kind of like fancy letters, and because I was thinking, okay, I'm gonna make a website and I have to use the name, so I was just playing around with this whole identity immediately to kind of like start using the persona, because I felt like as soon as I picked the name, I was kind of free of my own personal identity, and I was able to start like my artist identity kind of.
Is this the first time that you've been without that? Because in the interviews you get to hide behind the persona, you get to hide behind the words. With your artwork, you get to hide behind the artwork. The podcast is hard because I'm not gonna lie, I half expected this just to be a blank screen and then you talking through some like vocoder with some a Care Bears sound effect on it for 40 minutes, and I'm so glad that you haven't. But this must be one of the sort of different experience for you doing this now, kind of like all cards on the table. No?
Well, it's a bit tricky because when I meet people in the context of art, like in an affair or an exhibition, then I never really feel like I can't be myself, because I am me, and I am me with the name or without the name. But just for the in a digital world, I'm glad that I can kind of hide behind a screen, because I'm really bad with the whole social interaction kind of thing. But it's easier to create your or to live your personality if you are free of fear, of social fear, because that's always what's kind of manipulating me. It's making me be weird when I go out. It's not myself. It's just like I'm always like, damn, why do I have to be like this? So
when we asked you to be on the podcast, I was gonna send you the example of Austin Lee, but you wrote back to me that was like the one that you were listening to. And it's cool because, yeah, I totally get it. And what was awesome about when we talked to Austin, ironically, during the Armory Spring Break Week in New York, was like how he was talking about how people think that because he does like these kind of what appear to be digital paintings or digital representations, that like it's easy to do. And it's not easy to do. It's actually very, very difficult to get the marks that he wants to make it look naive or make it look digital and simple. It's actually really difficult. Do you have that similar experience in your attempts to create what appear to be digital, almost simple paintings that are actually really, really complicated?
Well, I couldn't really relate to the difficult part. I don't try to make a digital looking work. I just I found that working digitally is, for me, feels most natural to start the work, and translating from the digital to the analog for me is very straightforward, and I actually don't find it difficult at all. It's more like it's for me. I enjoy it a lot to have the digital and then to make it into an actual object. That's for me. That's the best part of the work.
Did you ever go through a stage where you were doing kind of digital only stuff, and like did you kind of learn how to use programs at any point that then kind of you did?
Well, that was when I was a teenager. I was like 16 was the first time I had access to a computer at home. My parents bought the first PC, and I immediately discovered Microsoft Paint. And I was so hooked on this like really basic program, but you could paint anything you wanted to. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And that was, I really played with this a lot. And then later on, we got Photoshop, and it was even better because you could start to use like actual images and play around with them, make collages and stuff. So for many years, I was only making digital work. I never really thought about putting this into an actual physical object. That was only later.
And that was just because of necessity and just because it was something that was put in front of you and you could play with? Or is that something you just like to do as opposed to putting a paint on a canvas?
It was because it was new. The technology for me was new with the computer, and it was just I wanted to see what I can do, like what's possible to make. For me, it was I was making drawings and try to make them look as realistic as possible. Like I had a chocolate bar with a wrapper around it, and I tried to make it look like a photograph just with paint, with the Microsoft Paint. So that was my thing for quite a while, to just work with like a mouse, and paint with a mouse. It was much more exciting than to paint on paper.
So what are you working with in the studio at the moment, and what tools?
Well, I only work in acrylics, and I have my airbrush. And the sculptures have so many different materials. I'm always trying different new things, and because sometimes things fail, and then I try to figure out why it didn't work, and then I try to find a different method or material to make it work better. And so the sculpture part of my work is much more material intense. The paintings are very straightforward. It's like acrylic, lots of acrylic paint, airbrush, and then this one is jute, not canvas. Like the really rough. So it's the first time I use a different surface, but apart from that, it's always the same strategy. It's just the most playful part is with the sculptures, where I try to experiment with materials.
Do you feel that there will be a point at which you'll start to further explore the digital spaces?
Well, I'm kind of intrigued by virtual reality, but I'm very sensitive with nausea. And I've tried to do video games with VR, but I just get seasick almost instantly. So I'm not really made for that kind of thing.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. No, for me, my iPad is this is the only thing I need, because it has a nice big screen and I can just draw on there. Really, it doesn't feel like I'm drawing on a screen. It just feels really natural to work on there. So that's as much digital as I need, really.
At what part making Seaweed Sunrise, excuse me, at that, just using that as an example, like at what point are you making this body of work that you start getting, like, for you, do you start getting excited? Like, is it something, a new technique that you try? Is it like different colors that are new, or like when do you start feeling like, okay, all right, it's starting to come together now? Or do you never get that?
You mean for a particular show or body of work, or?
Yeah. Like, are there things that you go like, okay, I found a little different style or different technique that I really want to try, and things start happening and you start getting really, really excited? Like, at what point does that happen? And is it happening a lot for you recently? Like, how does that go?
Well, I always try to move forward. I don't want to stay in the same spot and keep doing the same thing. I always try to find a new path without doing something completely different. So I just want to keep developing what I'm doing already. And I mean, with the paintings, I still feel like I haven't really arrived at the point where I feel like this is totally me. I'm still trying to dig further into what I can do or what I want to do. And with the sculpture, it's kind of similar. I still try to find out what else I can make. So it's a continuous process. Like, I never get really like the feeling of getting bored by what I do or anything at all.
I have to ask another obvious question. What's a Seaweed Sunrise?
Well, I was thinking about I really like mornings, even though I don't get up very early. I like to sleep quite late, but
hang on, what's quite late?
Well, it depends. I mean, sometimes it's like between 10 and 11. Ooh. Sometimes it's a bit sooner. I can also get up at 8.
Just checking.
It depends. But I have this romantic idea about the morning because it's a fresh start of a new day, and you can always make something completely new. You have a chance to make something that you didn't do the day before. And so the morning for me is the sunrise. I don't know. Also, maybe because it's in Hong Kong, and for me, this is where the sun starts, kind of. And
I love that. The sun starts in Hong Kong.
No, it doesn't start in Hong Kong, obviously, but
I loved it. I loved it. I was with you all the way there.
So I don't know. And also because right now the world is so in such a weird place, and we don't know, like everything that was like in January is past. And now we have to start completely fresh and completely new and have to figure out where's everything going. Generally a very optimistic person. So I try to look at this as a fresh start to do something good, better, hopefully.
Maybe this is dumb, but it's in your name, the future, and just the idea of the future, and like these like fresh starts, and the fact that because like kids have like a little bit of a positive, I mean, they can have like a little bit of like a rebellious positive sort of spin on how they want their lives to be or where they're headed. Like, what do you think about, it's so dumb, but what do you think about the future? Like what
There's nothing dumb about
That's
that.
right. Yeah. Like, what do you like? What are the things that it's in? You clearly, there's something about that name. Like, what do you think about the future? Like, what are the things that you're excited about? What are the things you're concerned about? Just as a member of this world, but also just as an artist. Like, how do you keep that name, Super Future Kid, alive as you go ahead?
Well, first of all, I mean, I always see myself as I never left childhood in a way. I mean, it's not that I chose to, it's just the way I am. So that's definitely to make sure people understand that this is the kid part in the name. And then as I say, I'm always quite optimistic person, and I actually look forward to the future, because I always have these fantasies of technology and how it's going to change and how cool. Like, imagine there is a tech where they can download your brain into a machine, and you can live forever, and you can continue seeing how things develop. Because it's for me, it's unthinkable that at some point I will be dead and I have no idea how things continue. Like, I always want to know like how the world is developing, and I just don't want this to stop. So I don't have I don't have much fear. I mean, of course, there's always like this up and down, and there's like shitty times, and then there's they're down here, and then good times coming. It's always like this up and down, so that's natural. But I'm generally looking forward to see where everything goes, and there's always a good part somewhere.
Thank you for taking that question seriously and doing a nice job with it. As I fumbled around to get to what I was trying to say. How does a year like 2020 then affect maybe a little bit of the positive outlook? Because it has been a rough year in so many ways. It's also been a year of hopefully social awakening for so many people. Like, do you how does Super Future Kid feel about 2020?
For me, it's a big pause button. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
I mean. I don't really know what to think much of this year right now. I'm probably looking back at it in a few years' time. I have a better feeling for what it was. But right now, it's just it kind of sucks. But I also feel very fortunate and that I wasn't really affected by all the shit that's going on, and I feel like I don't have any reason to complain. It wouldn't be fair to.
Is there anybody that you know, or any like who grew up in East Germany who kind of have felt sort of weird, uncertain years before, that like there is something kind of in you that's a little bit like, you know, I grew up in as kind of an uncertain future, and that I can sort of, the pause button is something that might have been a reality for people who lived in East Germany in the 60s, 70s, and 80s?
I suppose I was only 8, so I hadn't really a clue about what it meant to live there, except for all the things that I counted on a daily basis. But yeah, it's hard to say. I'm kind of not surprised about every time something like this happens, because it's just life.
Right.
It's been happening this way for centuries.
Yeah.
It comes and
right.
goes up and it down.
I was just saying that I always because when you watch movies where there's like a real pandemic and there's like a zombie apocalypse or something, and then you hear stories that they have these labs here in London, and they have they develop these really crazy viruses, and I was like, what if some of these get out? Like, what's going to happen? But right now, this is sort of, you can imagine what it would be like, but we're all kind of fortunate because it's such a, it could be much, much worse. Like, it could be something as weird as the bubonic plague, or I don't know, something that really kills everybody instantly. So
wait, so are you saying you're slightly upset that it's a little bit more civil than you thought it was going to be?
No,
she did refer to the other ones in films as real pandemics, as opposed
exactly.
to
it's like we get a taste of it, but it's more like okay, we have an idea of what it could be.
I can hear the Yelp review just now. 3 stars. Not as good as the ones in the films, but it was fine.
I mean, I was waiting for the zombies to come too. But we actually, I mean, they're in America. We have all sorts of weird zombie issues at the moment. So I don't know.
In that thread of dystopia, where's your happy place? Because the world that you create feels like a happy place. But I wonder, because for you, it's also still work and there's a purpose, and this is your support network and your income and everything. And I wonder, where is your pure, unadulterated happy place that you go to in your head, or physically?
Physically, it's the studio, because here I feel completely safe. and I feel like at home, and I can be the person I am, which is an incredibly childish person, but I can be myself here. So, but mentally, I'm always, I don't know, when I feel like my work allows me to kind of imagine myself into these places, because I feel like every time I make a new piece, it's extending my own reality a bit further. So I create my own world in a way, and I just know that I can make an extra piece of that world whenever I want to. So this is kind of my happy place, thinking that I can go in there anytime and I can expand it anytime I want to.
I think that's one of the most beautiful things that's ever been said on this podcast.
That was really nice.
I really do. I love that. I absolutely love that idea of being able to just extend your space, your happy space, anytime you want. Because I don't think many of us get that access to be able to tap into something where we can just build it ourselves. You know, if the world hasn't provided this for you, then you build it yourself. And I think that's something really beautiful, and also a really good way to end it. Unless you've got
No, I mean, that
anything
was
else.
great. That was great. I loved it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
You too.
So there you go. Super Future Kids' latest exhibition will be taking place at the socially distanced Over the Influence Gallery in Hong Kong from the 10th of October. Be sure to book ahead if you plan on visiting, and keep an eye on her Instagram for all the action. We'll be back with you guys real soon, so from Evan and myself, till then, take care, look after yourselves and each other, and for the love of God, vote.